What was a fact taught to you in school that has been disproven in your lifetime? Eggs are good for you. Eggs are bad for you. Some eggs are good for you, but not too many. Eat all the eggs you can. Eggs are bad for you again. Eggs are good for you again. etc. 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 That it's impossible for girls to be colorblind. In 8th grade science, my teacher started showing our class those circles made of different colored dots. If your vision is normal, you see a number. If you're colorblind, you either don't see a number or you see a different number. When I started calling out different numbers than others in my class, he started trying to stump me. He couldn't believe I was colorblind. He was shuffling through all his cards with the circle dot numbers. He just about refused to believe it. This was in 1996. I've learned since that it's still incredibly rare for girls to have colorblindness, but we are out there. Much of the geography I was taught in school ended up being wrong while I was still in school. Now a few borders moving or countries renaming themselves on the far side of the world would not matter so much, but I went to school in Germany in the 80s and 90s. My parents paid good money for a world atlas for my geography lessons that I was supposed to use for several years. The next year the publisher came out with a revised atlas with a little German flag on it to indicate that this one now showed a united Germany among other things. Not something I learned in high school, but I learned it during that age. Essentially I was taught that applying a tourniquet in a first aid situation guaranteed that the person would lose their limb, and that it should only ever be a last resort in an exceptional situation. Turns out it takes a really long time for someone to actually lose their limb when putting a tourniquet on, and a lot of people bled to death in the beginning of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan because people were hesitant to use tourniquets. Now applying a tourniquet is one of the first steps when treating a casualty, at least in a military setting. Edit made the wording less convoluted. Also glad this is getting attention. Massive hemorrhage is nothing to fuck with. Disclaimer, I grew up in a cult school. I was taught that the Native Americans offended God, but were offered one chance to come back to him. This chance was presented to them in the form of the Trail of Tears. The hardship they experienced, I was taught, is of the type that brings people closer to God. And just in case you thought this lesson was done being racist, not by a long shot. Since they rejected that chance, God permanently afflicted their race with alcoholism. I mean, this was disproven since, well, it's just never been true. But it's taught at insane, fundamentalist, cult schools. Obviously I know it's a load of racist horseshit, but it's absolutely something that was taught at the school I went to as a kid. Edit. Holy crap, did not expect this to blow up. I'll answer questions in this thread about the experience, but I don't think I'm going to probably do an AMA. I dunno. If people are interested enough, I suppose I might. I was in first grade in 1977. My teacher was an old lady on the brink of retirement. Needless to say, she taught us outdated knowledge. Things we've learned. The continents never moved. It's just a coincidence that both sides of the Atlantic Ocean look so similar. No one knows why the dinosaurs vanished. They certainly had nothing to do with birds. Christopher Columbus was a great guy who set sail from Spain on a hunch that he would find an unexplored continent. There are flavor sections to the tongue. The funniest part of this whole thing is that this is commonly used as an early scientific experiment for young school children. They use droppers filled with salt water, sugar water, etc. and try to drop them on different sections of the tongue to see if the subject tastes the flavors in question. So we have thousands of school children performing this little experiment, and yet few of them, nor the science teachers instructing them, ever challenge the premise of the experiment itself. It's a great demonstration of confirmation bias. The things I always thought I knew, the things I think, and more, they really ain't as half as true as what they were before. I always knew the things I ought, or so I thought, I knew, but then they changed the thing I thought was true. I used to think I used to know, but now the meaning's shrunk. I think I know I don't, and so, my thoughts are all, unthunk. Our brains cannot heal. I was in the final class for my psych major psychology physiology 2, and the professor spent a fair amount of the first class apologizing to us, as we had gotten to the point that enough research had gathered to show that brains do indeed heal. He said he didn't, therefore, know how much of the information he would be giving us over the semester was going to hold up as accurate, nor what we had been taught over the previous 4 years. Psychology is really like 75 years behind other medical fields, yo. Wikipedia is not a trusted source, and anyone can go on and edit it. Do you know how hard it is to edit a Wikipedia entry? The way I got around this is I just go to the bottom of any given Wikipedia article and use the sources they already provide in MLA format. Edit. I've noticed that a few people are getting educated about Wikipedia and how it's actually a really cool website and the things it does / offers. I just want you guys to know that you can actually download the entirety of Wikipedia, minus pictures, on a flash drive, only about 58 GB uncompressed. Here's the link if you're interested. Astronomer here. When I was in elementary school we learned there were no other planets beyond our solar system and they were super rare. We now know that thanks to Kepler and other missions, that statistically all stars have planets. The reason for thinking they are rare BTW is there is a state of planetary evolution that theoretically couldn't be explained. Think going from clumpy chunks of material to boulder chunks kind of thing. Might be a different stage. Can't remember 100%. It turns out we still can't explain how this stage works theoretically. We have just found planets everywhere instead. Beyond that, I remember the discovery of the Kuiper belt in 1992 past the planet Pluto. The beginning of the end of my very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. You won't walk around with a calculator in your pocket. You won't like Pokemon a year from now, 15 years later, duck you. Growing up I went to a small private church school, and they basically taught us that not everything in science could be trusted, because science said the earth was millions / billions of years old, but according to the Bible it was only about 6,000 years old, and just other stupid shit they tried to tell us in regards to science. It was actually crazy. Growing up I never really liked science so much because of how bad they made it seem, and then I got to high school and loved my science classes the most. It's so fascinating, and I just graduated with my biology degree this past spring, and now I just laugh at the things they tried to tell us as kids. I vividly remember learning it took exactly 24 hours to digest food. I even remember Josh Imbertson's response though. If I ate a banana at 12:30 on Monday, I would poop out that banana at 12:30 on Tuesday, right? Somehow, I was the only second grader who found this funny. No Josh, you'll poop out that banana a few hours later. Edit. Thanks everyone for describing your bowel movements. That no one knows where the moon came from. When I was in school there were a lot of theories to the origin of the earth. Captured meteor, formed at the same time as the earth from the same dust cloud, split from the earth, while the earth was still molten. Now we basically know that earth and a Mars-sized meteor collided, and the fragments formed the moon. When I was in 3rd or 4th grade we were taught cursive. The teacher insisted that all my high school teachers would automatically fail any papers that weren't in cursive, and that everything done in the adult world isn't printed. By the time I got to high school everything had to be typed, and the only requirement for cursive I've seen in the adult world is things that require my formal signature. Starting around 4th grade, I began writing everything with pen, because I loved how smooth they wrote, and I would get chills, like nails on a chalkboard chills, writing with pencil for some reason. Teachers told me if I wrote everything in pen in high school, the high school teachers would just throw away my work and fail me. Turns out almost everything in high school needed to be done in pen, or typed,